The views expressed in this podcast are solely based on personal experience and is not intended to replace professional medical advice. Our opinions should not be taken as therapeutic advice, as this podcast is for entertainment and information purposes only.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Police Condition. My name is Ryan, and sitting across from me and always standing beside me, my lovely wife, Laura.
Hello.
Alright, so I'm going to do something a little different tonight. To start off, I'm going to tell a little joke. Alright, so this guy goes into the doctor because he's got a horrible stutter. He can't talk without stuttering. Every word's a stutter. And the doctor goes, well, is there anything unique about you or anything? And he's like, doctor, I've got a large penis. And the doctor goes, okay, well, let me take a look. And the doctor looks at it, and it is the largest penis he's ever seen in his life, right? So the doctor tells the man, he's like, all right, what's going on is all your blood that should be going to your brain to help you talk is going to your penis. So we need to do a surgery, take some of your penis off. The guy's like, okay, doc. So they do the surgery. The doctor takes a lot of this guy's penis off, right? And the guy wakes up from the surgery, and the doctor's like, how you feel? He's like, I can talk, doctor. I don't have a stutter anymore. He's like, awesome. So about a month goes by. The guy goes back to the doctor. He's like, doctor, I need my penis back. He's like, I can't get any women anymore. I can't get laid, nothing. You got to help me. And the doctor goes, fuck you. So the reason for that joke is I thought it kind of related was today we're going to be talking about coping, but with sex.
I just wanted to hear you say penis again. Yeah, sex. It's a fun topic.
Very fun.
Yeah, I think it's one of those topics that is talked about. It's just talked about in different ways.
Yes, exactly. I think I've seen it. I know we've personally seen it, that there's a big issue in law enforcement and first responders in general, where a lot of them, I don't know if they're using it for coping, but I know I used it for a coping mechanism. And a lot of the times it's extramarital. And it seems to be a large issue in the first responder community.
Yeah, I didn't realize it until I started actually like working with first responders and hearing stories and just people coming out directly and being like, this is what happened, this is what I've been doing. And it's just really shocking because it's a lot. It's rampant in first responders. And rightfully so in a way, just because of the stresses you deal with and how you're coping is, instant gratification and wanting something that's pleasurable. So it's understandable. It's just really sad how bad it is.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought going into law enforcement, I knew that like divorce rates were high and everything, and I kind of always thought it was because of long hours and just the stress and everything. But I believe a lot of it's actually because of infidelity.
Mm. And it's hard to tell too, like statistically, because there is that limitation of people actually telling that. I mean, yeah, you guys do work long hours. There's financial concerns. There's a lot of other things contribute to that, especially with like stress and stuff. But who's really going to be like, yeah, I was cheating on my husband. I've been caught for so many years. I've been cheating on him the whole time. Like no one wants to say those things.
Yeah, right. I mean, exactly. We talked about what we want to do for an episode today, and we decided on this. Yes, I've had my issues, and I'm not proud of them. And said I didn't want to talk about it. Never really wanted to talk about it because, like I said, it's an embarrassment to me. But yeah, I had my issues. I mean,
Yeah.
I had an issue about 2 years ago. Well, 3, 4 years ago that I met, and guys, and even ladies, but more than the guys, I met a nurse working an off duty, and we began to talk, and our relationship got inappropriate. Nothing physical happened, but there was a lot of inappropriate talk on my end and her end, and I look back on it now, and I'm just embarrassed of it.
Mm.
It's just something that I didn't realize at the time that I was kind of using it as a coping mechanism, and the only thing it helped me do was push me away from you.
Yeah, it was hard. On the other end, um, someone who doesn't work in law enforcement, but I see the struggles that you deal with. But on the home front of things, like finding that out was really hard. I mean, it's difficult being the spouse of a, a police officer. The long hours, the taking care of the kids, the house, all this stuff, and finding out that you're not the only one that you're talking to was a big blow. It was hard. But then going into this field that I'm going into, realizing how many people go through this.
Yeah.
I had a handful of clients who had almost the same exact story that we did. And I found out two weeks prior to starting practicum. So wanting to help these individuals, hearing them dealing with all these issues and, putting their trust in me to help them through it. And like my world turned upside down. It was very difficult. I went through a lot of symptoms of PTSD and depression, anxiety, like all this stuff. And, we could have split. I mean, I talked to a divorce lawyer. I mean, I was ready
Right.
to go.
And rightfully so. I completely understand. And I didn't want you to leave, obviously, and I would have been crushed by it, but it would have been my own damn. I mean, it was my fault. I was an idiot, and I used it for that. I guess coping, like I said, and I don't know. Like I said, I look back on it now, and I have a whole different outlook on it. And like I said, I mean, for the last year and a half, it kind of just made me help with my depression, with me getting and it's part of the reason why I lost my job
Mhm.
from the last department, and so it just added more and more to my depression, and my depression was already at a high because of losing my job, and then having not having but trying to fix things with you and seeing your depression, it just made me worse. And I mean, I don't know if my depression made it worse for you and your depression, but I know it was definitely even worse for me because I'm supposed to be, I've always had that idea of I'm supposed to be your protector and be there for you, and I'm the reason you're feeling the way you are, and there's nothing I can do to make you feel better.
I mean, the whole process was difficult, and it's really hard when you've never experienced something like that, especially together. Like we've talked about how it's, grief. I would constitute this as grief is not linear, and you're going to have these changes, going to be back and forth. You're going to think you're like progressing, and then all of a sudden it's like back to square one. Like, why are we back here? And going through all that chaos was really hard, I think, for both of us. But once we, once I made the final decision that I was going to stay, I put all my cards in that basket to work on the relationship. And yeah, I had doubts along the way. Obviously, we had fights about that, but um, having that confirmation in myself, knowing that like I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna work on this. There were certain things that I was like, well, if he does this and this and this, I'm out. But you never did. You were working on yourself. You were changing. You were communicating better. And I hate to say it, but something that is a marriage killer, thankfully didn't kill our marriage, but it also made it a lot better.
Yeah,
We found something we had never found at the 16 years of or 15 years of marriage at the time, and it kind of opened both of our eyes to kind of see each other finally.
yeah. I mean, as much as I hate that it ever happened, it has turned our relationship and our lives around in so many different ways. I mean, it opened us up to things that we were never open about.
Yeah.
I mean, you had things you've never told me, and obviously I had things I wasn't telling you,
Mm-hmm.
and it has changed us. It has made our relationship so open and honest now, and that open and honesty is just I can't even explain how it makes me feel now because it is. so amazing.
Yeah. I feel maybe we started in such like a superficial way and we didn't want to tell each other like our dark secrets because we were like, oh, he's going to judge me or think of me this way and he'll not love me anymore. And it was, I mean, we were young. I mean, we were
Right.
super young,
We were
but
we were very young when we got married. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, very young.
but we were just dumb too. I mean, I don't think it really age or whatever. Like we didn't know what we wanted in ourselves. I feel like, and then we got married, and we're like, oh yeah, like we know each other. This is going great, and we're just doing what society wants us to do. And there were so many things that not only we didn't talk about. I think we were just scared to tell each other.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you don't want to tell people your darkest secrets because you want them to look highly of you and
Mm,
love you, but how can they love you if they don't know the true you?
yeah, and there's a lot of marriages out there that you have people who tell their deepest, darkest secrets like right off the bat, and I think that's great. I mean, like you're trying to be transparent, and if that person can't accept you, then like you're not really meant to be together. And I never saw it that way. It was just like, oh, I have to put this facade on just a little bit so
Yeah.
I look this way and you'll like me.
I need to be perfect,
Yeah.
right? You want to be perfect in their eyes. And I mean, obviously I have my faults and you have your faults.
No, I don't.
But I've never seen you as perfect as I see you now, knowing your faults and you knowing all of mine. And like I said, I mean, just our relationship is just so much different and better now, and it's crazy to me how you go from something horrible, horrible,
Mm.
and it becomes you grow from it, you know?
It's funny you say that. You always presented yourself to be this like alpha male, strong. I know what I want, and I'm just this macho guy. And you've never looked more perfect to me than when you're sitting in your shame and guilt and like expressing like true raw emotions of everything that happened, but just like of your life and who you are. It was so vulnerable, and to me that was the man that I knew was always inside of you, but it was you were just like covered by this hard shell that never came out, and it took something terrible to do that, but it happened, and I see you differently because of that in a good way.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, yeah, it's after all this, I look at you in a completely different light, and I we we got into a lull, I guess, in our relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we had kids, and life just wasn't really fun in that aspect of life. And I mean, I another thing about this with that coping with sex is porn. I mean, I was watching porn constantly. I was always paying attention to it. I mean, I was on Reddit, sitting there at work, not doing anything. And I'm looking at Reddit and just looking at inappropriate pictures all day, or scrolling Instagram and seeing the inappropriate, scantily dressed women just bouncing around and doing all that stuff, right? So that was something that I was constantly looking at. And that constant seeing of that, it changed my, I guess, outlook or aspect of, oh, well, this is what a perfect woman is, and this is what I should be looking for. That, completely fake, big breasted, big butted. I mean, you see them. Everyone's seen it on porn and on Instagram and all that stuff, right? And you're like, oh, this is what I should be. This is what I want, right?
Mm.
And then really, it's like, no, I don't want that fake shit. I don't want somebody who's fake. I want someone who's genuine and real and honest and loving and caring.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, you're kind of diving into the whole expectations of sex. I mean, there's expectations to a lot of things in our lives. But it's different with sex, I feel like, because if you're like, you go and watch like an action movie, right? And
Which one?
it's awesome. um, let's say True Lies because it's
Yes.
such an oldie, but it's a goodie. And you're watching it as an adult, right? And it's just amazing. You're just like, this is such a great movie. And while you're watching it, it's like you might have that excitement to like be Arnold, right? Like you want to save your wife and like kill a bunch of people and have the big arms and whatever.
Yeah, get to
Like
the chopper.
it was wonderful.
Thank you. I've been working on it.
But you kind of like immerse yourself in the movie in a way that like you kind of become a part of it. But once the movie's over, you're not going to go to work and like pretend you're Arnold unless you're very immersed in that world in a different way. That's maybe a little bit abnormal, but
So I shouldn't be talking to people at work like that?
probably not. No, it's probably a bad idea. I mean, there are some people that do that, but I'm saying like the average person is not going to like go to work and like pretend or fantasize about that life because they know they can differentiate between watching a movie and real life. But when it comes to porn, it triggers a part of our brain that is part of our survival. Um, and when we do that, it's becomes more of an expectation in the real world to perform like the people that you see in porn. Um, and it's interesting because that it's fake. I mean, the people are being paid. The women have spent thousands of dollars to look that way. The men, they're being told what to do. They've probably spent thousands of dollars to look the way they do, and that's their whole life. They've dedicated their whole life to do that, and there's no love between these people you're watching. You know that. You know all these things.
Wait, they don't love each other?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Sorry. Changes everything now.
Jesus.
But for some reason, when you get so immersed in that world and it becomes a habit, it becomes something you watch maybe on the daily. When you put the phone down and you go into the bedroom with your spouse, those expectations are still there. Why is she not moaning enough? Why doesn't she look like this? Oh, I feel a little fat over here. Or she's not wanting it like, Betsy in the video. It's like 1950s. Betsy's her name. I want to experience that because that's what now my mind's associating with sex. And that's what I should be getting. And even if the sex with your spouse is good, it's not spectacular. And your brain's like, that wasn't satisfying enough. It needs to be spectacular.
Yeah.
And that's unattainable.
Right, yeah, because exactly, that's all you're looking at and that's all you're seeing. You're like, why am I not performing like that guy,
Mm-hmm.
Why was that so fast? They do it for 30 minutes at a time, like, did she even, climax or anything like that? Like, those girls are constantly doing it. Why can't I get my wife to do that,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then now sex isn't as intimate as it should be because now you're removing that emotional connection, and now you're just worried about that physical sensation, the physical appearance, right. The physical connection in general.
And I think we can both agree that for a long time, ours was not intimate.
Mm.
It was just a chore almost, right? Like it just felt like a chore.
Yeah. So we weren't getting our emotional needs met on either end.
Right.
And it did become a chore. And then that's usually what happens is, if you can't work it out, there's no awareness of that, you're going to turn to things like porn because you're still a person. You still have needs and wants. And it's so readily available to us as a society that, it's going to be that instant gratification of what you're really needing, even though in the end it's not at all what you need.
Right. And we're not saying don't watch porn. I mean, if you want to watch it, go ahead and watch it. I'm just telling you my experience with it. And I know we listened to a podcast, I don't remember what it was called, and they were talking about how men are more, I think they said more visual with it, right? And they like imagine themselves with these women, right? What was...
Not more visual. They actually found that women are more visual, but they will turn it off if they see something of disgust faster than men would. But yeah, there's different types of porn. I think you're talking about like Instagram photos, like static pictures and stuff. Yeah. So when you're looking at a static picture of like, scandalous dressed woman, maybe at the beach or something in a bikini, you're not just looking at that picture as like motionless. Your mind kind of creates this fantasy of you like being there. It's more dynamic. Like you're at the beach with her, you're kissing her, you're hanging out with her. And it could happen within split seconds of looking at that photo. And now you are technically engaging in some sort of porn that you yourself are immersed in as one of the porn stars, basically.
Right, right. And yeah, people probably hear this like, oh, Instagram's not porn. There's no porn on Instagram. But, I mean, these women are dressed inappropriately. And there's dudes that are dressed inappropriately, too. It's not just women.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to bag on women. But it is in its way, its own way, its own form of porn.
Mm.
It may not be everything hanging out and things like sexual things happening.
Like hardcore.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
but it's still its own form of porn.
Mm.
Like watching HBO channel or Cinemax when you don't have it. It's all squiggly. And if you squint your eyes just enough, maybe you'll get a glimpse.
Oh, a boob. I
Yeah.
saw it. Beautiful. And yeah, I mean, like, when you're watching like hardcore porn, you're watching everything. There's nothing missing from that. Unless you're watching like Asian porn, they like block things out
I think
there.
it's the
Where
Japanese. Yeah, I think a lot of the
Japanese,
Japanese
okay,
porn they block stuff
just
out. I
just
think it's just the Japanese.
huh.
I mean, I don't.
Porn expert
I'm
over
not
here.
really a porn expert. Maybe back in the day, but not quite as much. Kind
But
of pulled away from it. Actually, to be honest, I've completely gotten off of all that. Like I have Facebook and stuff, but I've gotten off Instagram. I've gotten off Reddit and all that stuff because not only when all this happened did I kind of hit a wall and I realized that this isn't who I want to be. This isn't the person I want to be. This isn't the husband or father I want to be. I want to change myself. I don't want to put myself in a situation where I'm looking at it and I can just kind of go back. I want to stay away from it. I mean, yeah, of course, occasionally, even on Facebook and stuff, you'll see it. And sometimes I'll watch it, sometimes I won't. Most of the time I'll just skip through it, but sometimes I'll catch myself watching it. And I'm like, okay, pull it back a little bit because that's not who I want to be anymore. I don't want to be so immersed in that world. Because I mean, that's all it was for a couple of years for me was just constantly looking at it. Like, and then in my mind, I'm justifying it like, oh, I'm just being a dude. All dudes do this, and blah 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 blah. And maybe most dudes do it, but it doesn't make it right.
yeah, and not just like right or wrong. Is it healthy for you?
Yeah,
Is
it doesn't make it healthy. Yeah, that's more than right or wrong. So
But I mean, I think, and this might be a surprise to my mom who's listening.
hi,
Hi,
mom.
mom. But I watch porn. I used to. I think I watched it not as much as you did, but before all this happened with us, I watched it regularly, and I think was experiencing something different than you. Like as I maybe a woman, or just maybe this is like an individual experience, but like you were having these like high expectations of like what should be happening in our bedroom. I was having high expectations of like me, and I was becoming more insecure with like my body, how I was acting, and then that just like did the opposite effect of like I just don't want to do this at all, and like my libido was terrible. And when I did engage in porn, like I didn't want anything to do with you. It's like I'm done, and I don't need you anymore. And it became like a big issue,
Yeah,
and I didn't realize it was. I thought it was normal because the friends that I have, I mean, they're not bashful, they're not shy. They'll talk about watching porn too. So I thought it was normal. And the women who did tell me they didn't watch porn, like I was amazed by that. I was like, why don't you watch porn? Like that's interesting. And now I have a different like lens on it. Like I view it so differently that I can see now why they don't watch porn.
yeah.
It's kind of useless. I feel like for me at least.
I I feel the same way now. I mean, in the last, I guess, year and a half, I've probably watched it maybe 2 or 3 times.
What? You've been watching
Yeah,
it?
like you don't know. But the difference is, I used to hide it. I'd hide it and I'd delete it. Now, if I watch it, I tell you, like, hey, I'm gonna watch this. Like, you're busy with the kids or something, and
Yeah.
I'm just like, hey, I'm gonna watch this. Are you cool with that?
Mm.
And now you don't care. Like, you're just like, yeah, if you need to.
Yeah, that's why we have that 1800s painting in the bathroom that's new that I take the eyeballs out and watch you through.
So me watching porn, you're watching me watch it. So like I'm your porn then.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Wait, we didn't change at all. This is weird now.
Uh,
But no, yeah, I don't care. Like I think every relationship's different too. Like if you have a spouse that's like, I don't like you watching porn. It makes me feel uncomfortable. It's like you're viewing somebody else. That should be respected. I don't care that you watch porn. I'm actually okay with that because I'd rather you be doing that than, off with somebody else. But
right.
in the same sense, like if I knew the amount that you were watching, I don't think I wouldn't have been mad. I know I wouldn't have been mad. I just would have been concerned.
Right.
And obviously that is a concern because it was affecting your everyday life and, your thoughts, all this stuff. So I just worry that it could get back to that, and just having that open communication, that transparency of what we're doing, because like we're sexual partners. I want to know if you're doing something sexual and I'm not involved. What are you doing? Like, I think that's fair, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it should be, and I feel the same way with you if you would need to do it or something, like if I'm not home, or you know what I mean.
Mm.
I don't want to be graphic on the podcast, but I think everyone knows what we're meaning.
It's late Wednesday night.
Yeah. Well, we're going to put this one on at midnight, like the old HBO shows. Yeah.
Oh, it's gonna be fuzzy, so you can't see us really.
You just can't hear it, like the last episode.
Yeah. Oh, oh man, yeah. But that going back to like kind of just how we view ourselves sexually too. I think porn kind of distorts how we see like our roles as like the genders in the bedroom. This does not matter like your sexual orientation. Like it just you as an individual, like that role that you play in the bedroom, just it speaks so much to us that like porn and society has really crafted for us, and we weren't able to do that ourselves.
Right.
So like men are expected to be macho, experienced, and sexually competent, and women are expected to have sexy, perfect bodies, have minimal to no experience, and be sexually serving, which is very contradictory.
Yeah, yeah.
But not all men are like that, and not all women are like that. And to like reach these expectations and knowing that you can a lot of the time, that is going to cause a lot of anxiety, depression, low self confidence, low self esteem, and then that just kind of happens with the other party as well. Your spouse or the person you're dating or whatever, and then comes relationship problems. So like
Yeah.
sex is the foundation of a lot of things that I think a lot of people don't really are aware of.
Right. And you say the whole low self-esteem. That's something I didn't even realize that was happening. Was my self-esteem, especially when it came to us in the bedroom, was just at a zero, basically, because I wasn't performing like I thought I should have been, and I wasn't doing the things that they do on the movies. And so I was like, what's wrong with me? And I thought I had an issue, and I thought there was issue. I mean, we talked about it. I go, hey, do I have an issue? Do I need to go to a doctor? Do I need to, when really it wasn't an issue with my body. It was an issue with my mind. Because now that my mind is a lot clearer and things are different, things in the bedroom are different for us. So
Yeah. And you were hiding the porn. So I had no idea. And so like when you came to me with this issue, like I didn't know what to do for you. And we had the conversation, and it was like we couldn't find an answer. But if I knew that, we could talk about that, like maybe we could have found a solution together. But it was hard when there wasn't open communication, because I feel like you felt embarrassed that maybe that consumption was just so high, but you weren't linking the two. And I don't you didn't even talk to your doctor about it, did you?
no, I did not.
Mm.
I would, because it was embarrassing to me.
Yeah.
It's weird because like shouldn't be embarrassed about this. I mean, I was having one issue and I wasn't embarrassed to talk about that issue, but for some reason this issue I didn't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's the whole taboo of sex and what you do in your bedroom, and
Mm.
that was just kind of an idea in my head of like, that's why it made me embarrassed about it. But
Yeah. There's a lot of ego behind sex drive, for sure. And women too. Like I think we feel that most of the time we are a lot more confident than we really are, and to be sexually vulnerable in the sense of like talking about it and kind of talking about those vulnerabilities is really tough for people to do, I've realized.
yeah, oh yeah. I mean, no one wants to show they're vulnerable because what, like we talked about in last episode, any bit of invulnerability, especially in our career field, is a weakness, right?
Mm.
So if you're feeling vulnerable, then you feel weak, or you feel vulnerable and weak, oh no, this might affect my job, and they might find out, and I might not, I might lose my job.
Yeah.
There's always those things, and I think that's one of the biggest issues with the whole mental health and first responders in general. And that's kind of one of the reasons why we wanted to do this podcast, was to show people that it's okay to talk about these things. It's okay because you're not weak. You're, if anything, you're stronger for talking about it than you are for keeping it in and hiding it.
Mm.
And all that keeping it in and hiding it's going to do is affect your personal life and your work life, and you won't even realize it until it happens.
Yeah. It's interesting, like our basic needs as humans, the basic things that we do, like they're very taboo subjects. And I think because we use it in such an unhealthy way, maybe, or like we're not supposed to be doing this, but it's like, oh, I'm doing wrong and I can't be doing wrong. Like I'm supposed to be, especially I see with a lot of like police officers, because you and firefighters, like you are meant to be perfect on the job. So like if you're doing anything that's wrong outside the job, even if it's not, if it's legal still, it's it shows like I'm not doing the right thing, and I'm not you know reaching the standards that I should be reaching in myself. But it's funny. So I remember I had a class. It was what was it? Psychobiology. And in the scientific textbook, it says the four F's of survival, and it's fighting, fleeing, feeding, and mating.
That's not an F.
That's what I thought when I read it, and I was like, "Oh, I see what they did there."
They were afraid to say fucking.
Yeah. I'm not afraid, but like they were trying to make a point to be clever. I don't know, but it was interesting to me. But it's funny because like the fighting and fleeing, obviously within our Olympic system, and we talked about before, is something pretty, you know, natural for us to react in pretty quickly. And first responders definitely have that ability to do it,
Yeah.
and hone in on that. But the feeding and the mating, you see that a lot. It's coping with either the sex or coping with the food, because you're wanting that dopamine release that, you just saw a dead body, or you just, witness a domestic violence, or you just listened to some old lady tell you her life story and you had to go do a report about something else that you're taking your time up. I mean, any stress that's on the job, you're going to go grab like that huge burger you were looking at because it releases dopamine. It's giving you that pleasure seeking chemicals that your brain's like, okay, we needed this. This is great. Same with sex. You're going to watch it on the porn or do it real life, whatever it might be, just to gain that instant gratification from whatever you're viewing on the job.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And if it's not a burger, it's beer.
Yeah,
you know.
that too. Yeah. I think that, well, I don't know if that goes into the feeding. No, that doesn't go into
You
feeding.
don't think so? No.
It's more like a substance thing, but yeah,
I
it
get
does
you.
apply to what.
The same kind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Sorry to make it correct you.
No, it's fine. You're the smart one here.
No, not really.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's one of those things that, like we said, no one wants to talk about it. No one wants to tell their spouse that they're unhappy with their sex life. Like, hey, you're not making me happy in the bedroom. Like, no one wants to say that. Or no one wants to say, hey, there's something I've always wanted to try, but maybe you're embarrassed to say it. Like, I don't know, maybe she won't like that, and then she'll think less of me, or
Mm,
something like that, right? And that's one of those things. If you're going to be in a relationship with someone, you need to be open about it. You need to be able to talk about it. You need to say, hey, I'm kind of into this. Would you want to try it?
yeah, and I think awareness is really important because it's just, at least in our generation, I feel like the consumption of porn that we watch, and maybe even like going outside your relationship, whatever, it's not as bad as I feel like it used. Not as bad. I'm saying like it's not as looked down on. I feel like within ourselves, like we can morally justify things that we're doing easier nowadays than we could then. I feel like I
Yeah.
don't know. That could just be me. That could be doing this for years, but awareness in your own relationship. So if you feel like you yourself are someone who partakes in a lot of porn viewing, or you're talking to that person maybe a little too much, it's a little too friendly, they're the opposite sex, your spouse doesn't know about it, or they do, but it's just kind of becoming inappropriate, whatever it might be, you're not having good sex with your spouse or the person you're in a relationship with. Um, why? I think ask yourself why. What is missing in my sexual relationship? What is missing in my relationship in general? And is the porn, is talking to this other person, is that affecting it? And in what ways?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, something I wish I would have asked myself back in the day. Like, what am I missing here? What's going on? Why am I not? Why are we not clicking like we did when we first met when we were young? Like, what is going on in our lives? Obviously, there's a lot of stressors with children and work and all that, and I get it. But if it's becoming a chore, like we said earlier, then you might want to think about it. Like, why is this a chore? It's supposed to be an intimate moment. It's supposed to be an enjoyable moment. It's supposed to be a bonding and connecting moment. And if it's none of those things, there might be an issue.
Yeah. Are they, is there too much of a high expectation because you're watching too much porn and it's boring? Is it maybe something like you said, like maybe it is your partner that's having some difficulties with stuff and you're not talking to them about it? Um, are you not satisfied with that person? I think it can even get down to that where it's like, well, I don't connect with this person anymore, especially in couples who have longer relationships, long marriages, 15, 20 years. Your sex needs and wants and desires, they change over time. The person you were when you were 20 is not going to be the same person you are when you're 40. You're going to want different things and you're going to see the world differently, and a lot of times your partner, they're changing as well, and it might be a different change, and if you're not on the same page, you're not communicating, it's it's not going to be very pleasurable in the bedroom.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, communication is key, right?
Yeah.
Communication and awareness, like you said. You got to be able to talk to your partner. You need to be able to communicate with them, and you also need to be aware of what they're doing and seeing what they're doing. Like we said in the other episode about your buddy, if your buddy seems a little off and different,
Mm.
talk to him. If your spouse seems a little off or different, talk to him.
Yeah.
Could save you a lot of heartache and a lot of issues, hopefully.
Yeah. And with the awareness too, like I think when it comes to the sex thing, and we were talking about like egos and like morally justifying things for ourselves to, have that instant gratification or the pleasure seeking, whatever is happening, to have the intentionality as well. Like if you don't have the intentionality to like reach out, talk, or like change the things in yourself, then you can have awareness all you want, I guess, and it wouldn't really matter. But to actually act on it and talk about it.
Yeah, you got to be willing to change.
Yeah.
If you're doing something that you know is wrong and you don't want to do it, like I said, I hit a wall when you found out about what was going on. It just hit me, and I hit a wall, and I didn't want to be that person anymore. I was willing to change.
Yeah.
If you're not willing to change, nothing's going to get better.
Yeah. And I wasn't going to talk about this, but I will. The woman that you were talking to is a nurse, obviously, and she was an ER nurse. I think she still is. And she's also in an environment that's ever changing and pretty traumatic at times. And it just, it baffled me that she never apologized, never, you know, reached out or anything. Like you guys talked for a long time, and she presented it as a friendship as well. She took the victimization that you did something wrong to her, and in my field, obviously I'm very biased on this, but I was labeling her everything. I was angry, I was mad, but I realized a lot of women in those types of fields have problems with that because they are kind of masking that stress they deal with every day. And they're reaching out just like you were with her to kind of get that instant gratification and to kind of release that pressure. Except she obviously was never aware of it, probably never will be. There's some borderline traits there, but that's for another story. Um, but I can see the resemblance in the type of jobs that y'all do and how you both coped with it. And then going into the work that I do and all these other people that I don't even know having these stories, having these complaints, talking about it in a way that's like, holy crap, this is rampant. This is so rampant, and it's awful because a lot of these relationships that could have been saved, they crumbled.
Yeah. I mean, didn't you meet someone who had almost the literal exact story as me?
I did.
And I mean, it's just crazy hearing that I'm not the only one, but it also helps knowing I'm not the only one because at a time I was like, why am I like this? Why am I doing this? Why are, you hear about it. There's a handful of people I've known, several guys who have been caught and got divorced, but it's, you still, when it's happening to you, you're like, oh, why am I the only one dealing with this?
Yeah.
And it's good to know that I'm not the only one dealing with it and other guys are dealing with it.
Yeah. And I'm thankful for my job, I feel like. And the time that it happened, yeah, it was very hard to get myself together, let alone listen to my clients. But I got it together. I was able to like set that hour aside just for them. And I think my fourth client, same exact story. She was in my position. And when she was talking, I was like, yeah, sister, just preach it. Like, and her relationship didn't work out. And I'm, working with her through that process. And, um, she is just like the opposite of like what we went through at this point because they went one way, we went the other. But then recently, I have somebody who was the betrayer, and talking to him in the therapeutic environment had it was supposed to be a little difficult for me just for frustration purposes and all this stuff and like what we went through. But I've gone through all that, thank goodness. But I'm seeing a lot of like resemblance in like the things that you were talking about and like your concerns, your vulnerabilities that I'm like helping him through. And it's just very interesting to see both sides
Yeah.
and where they both came from and how terrible it is on either
Yeah.
side. But
Either way, on either side, it's a shit show.
but the good thing I feel like, and we are like a prime example of this, is the people who did stick it through, that went through couples counseling, that took all the help, that were able to shed all of their like walls and become extremely vulnerable and say the things they didn't want to say that were so uncomfortable, admit to things they didn't want to admit to. They're strong. They're stronger. They have a stronger marriage relationship than they ever had in their entire lives, and that to me spoke more volumes than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I can say with pure honesty and truthness that our relationship has never been stronger and better. Yeah, we still have issues. We still fight a little bit. Still talk about the things that happened, but it needs to be talked about. It needs to be said. And I mean, I feel like a couple that doesn't fight isn't a real couple.
Yeah.
And I mean, if you look at it, we were talking about it, and during the time when I was talking to the other woman, we didn't really fight at all.
We did not.
Like, I mean, it seemed like our relationship was okay, but really, I just, oh yeah, you're right, and I didn't want to hear it because I knew in the back of my mind that I guess I knew that I was doing something wrong, and I'm just like, all right, well, I'll just deal with this, and
You were just telling me what I wanted to hear, so it
yeah,
would be happy at home and happy elsewhere as well.
exactly, yeah,
Um, one of a very prestigious, I think he's a psychologist. I should know that, but I don't. His name's Gottman, and he is very good with like couples and counseling and like getting to the root of problems. And he's got a lot of great theories out there. And one of them that he was talking about, he was expressing how conflict resolution is one of the strongest tools to have in a relationship, and you can't have conflict resolution without the conflict. And when you have conflicts, when you have arguments and fights, it's because there's a lack of communication or misunderstanding of one another. And if you don't get down to the root of that miscommunication, it will always be there. And that's why a lot of couples have the same arguments, is because that wasn't resolved yet. And so after that conflict, sit down, you're not, all heated up, and you can talk about these things and actually resolve what was the issue, and not like the petty stuff. Like, you didn't push your chair in, like, obviously that wasn't the problem. It was something a lot deeper than that. Um, then yeah, you're going to have the same arguments. You're going to be stuck there. Or if you're having these extramarital stuff happening and you're just masking things and telling the person what they want to hear, not actually communicating your feelings, yeah, it's going to end terribly.
yeah, yeah, very much. He's a psychologist. I just
Oh, thank you. Okay.
Also, he is awesome. We bought one of his books and we
Mhm.
read it together during all this,
Mhm.
and He just he knows what he's talking about, obviously.
Yeah.
So if you are going through an issue like this, look him up. Yeah, I know he's got. It's called the Gottman theory, right?
Yeah.
And it's basically all it is about infidelity, and he
Well, I don't think it's all about infidelity.
oh
It's just about like a lot of it is targeted towards that, but a lot of it is just like healthy relationships.
yeah
Yeah.
healthy making a healthy relationship,
Yeah.
and he gives you good ways to work on it and
Mm.
to really fix yourself.
And that's kind of what I'm pointing out too is just if you're not fighting in your relationship, as long as it's not like super violent, obviously, but if you're not fighting, um, then there's probably something missing or there's something wrong.
Yeah, yeah. Fighting's okay in a relationship.
Not every day. Like, let's talk
Yeah,
about that.
yeah,
Like, the
yeah.
frequency of fighting shouldn't be like
Yeah,
constant.
if you're
It just,
constantly fighting, that's something different. But a fight here or there, it's bound to happen. You're still two different people with two different personalities.
yeah. And no stonewalling too. Cause, like, I know a lot of people do that. Well, they'll have this huge argument and then they don't talk to each other for hours, days sometimes. And then they just start talking to each other again. And it's like, and I've seen that a lot. And there's no conflict resolution there. You didn't do anything. You didn't say anything. You said what you wanted to say in an argument and you were limbic. So, like we said before, your prefrontal's gone. So you're saying whatever you wanted to say just to defend yourself, to make yourself feel better, to hurt the other person. Then you don't talk about, like, oh, it was wrong. I'm sorry. Or, like, what were you trying to say? Like, none of that happened. So that argument is just like tacked on to that pile of other arguments, and just you're carrying that with you your whole relationship. And now we're getting into resentment. Now we're getting
Mm,
into, the contentment of your relationship, which is awful.
yeah, yeah,
It's hard to get out of that.
very much so. Yes.
This isn't couples counseling, but I just wanted to get
Yeah,
into
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Sorry.
We're not telling you what to do. We're
Just to look out for some of the signs, because if you are dealing with something like this, like you're, been married for a long time, or, maybe just a couple of years and you're experiencing some of these lulls, or just maybe not being fulfilled either sexually or emotionally, just to like kind of have some self-awareness and then that open communication to talk about
right,
it.
right. And you said the emotional thing. I felt like I wasn't being fulfilled sexually, but then you felt you weren't being fulfilled emotionally because I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't giving you that emotional connection you needed.
Yeah.
And men and women are different, I guess, when it comes to that. But now, like I said, that we have found this change in our relationship, and I am so much more emotionally connected to you. Now we're more sexually connected, also, and it's been great. Yeah.
It's amazing. It's weird that you bought all those fireworks every time we have sex and you lit them off in the room. It's kind of dangerous.
I know, but it's cool. It's cool.
So, no, this has been a very personal episode, but sex is very personal, I feel like. But it's something that's super important in our lives. And I think a lot of us kind of get distracted from the issues of sex that we're all dealing with from other things. We're all stressed, we're all doing stuff, we're all focused on other things, that sex sometimes isn't priority. And just to have awareness, like we were talking about, of maybe your own habits, your behaviors, talking with your spouse or loved one about maybe some issues, or not even issues. If you just spice things up or trying to get connected in a way, um, it's it's super important, especially first responders too. Like you get so wrapped up in that stress that a lot of times you do take it home. Unfortunately, it's so important to like schedule nights that you go out on a date, no electronics, don't talk about work on either side, and just goof around, have dinner, go see a movie, whatever it is, to just completely unplug from your life to just get a better connection.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one thing that we've been doing now is we'll find a night and we won't have electronics on. We'll put some music on and we'll just sit there and talk.
Mm.
And we'll talk for hours.
Yeah.
And it is one of those things that it's it's amazing because it just connects us so much.
Yeah. And it's interesting to know all the weird stuff in your head.
Yeah, yeah. And it and these aren't even talks about like the issues we've had or anything. Like we talk about random things. I mean, we talk about music that we like. We'll talk about spooky stuff, cryptids. We'll They're just anything. Like we'll just talk. Like we'll just come up with what we have a jar or
Yeah.
a bowl of questions and stuff that we'll pull out and we'll read and we'll just talk.
Yeah.
And you'd be surprised how much, even if it's just bullshit, you'd be
Mhm.
surprised how much it helps just talking.
Yeah. You learn so much about each other too, and the weirdest ways like that. Like some of those topics are just off the wall, never think about even talking about it. And once you start talking, it's interesting to know more about the other person.
Yeah, it very much is, and it's a really cool thing to do.
Yeah. And if you do feel like you have maybe an issue with like watching porn too much, honestly, stop watching
Ah,
it. Well, no, it's like honestly, yeah, like just give yourself like a week or two.
yeah,
If you give yourself 3 days, like it depends on how bad it is. Like if it's a week, don't watch it at all. Like go off Instagram, go off Facebook, whatever it is. Don't turn to the x.coms and just see how you feel after a week. And then you might have some withdrawal periods. I have read a lot about a lot of people experiencing that, and that might last a day or two. But
it's an addiction
it,
to an
yeah,
extent.
yeah,
Yeah, it's not a drug addiction,
yeah.
but it is something that you get so used to doing that you want to do, and sometimes it's good to take a break.
You call it like I know addiction is used a lot, and I don't like using the word because it's not like a clinical diagnosis. But if it is distressing your everyday life, like that's where that awareness comes in. Like, hey, am I doing these things because of this? That's why taking like maybe a week off just to see what happens, how you feel, how you react. It's yeah, it's beneficial. That's all
Yeah,
I'm saying.
it really is. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I haven't been looking at it for almost a year and a half, and I feel like a different person. I
Mm-hmm.
really do. Like, and it's kind of funny because those few times that I have watched porn, I felt shitty afterwards. Kind of, I was just like, this wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
It wasn't fulfilling,
Yeah.
and it wasn't enjoyable like it used to be. So,
It's because I cloned you and I killed the old you.
oh, well, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I didn't know you knew that. I
Yeah.
didn't know you knew how to do
Only me though. I'm the
that.
only one. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well,
Alrighty. Well, like we said, we know this was a very personal issue.
sorry, mom.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Uh, it was a tough subject. It was a tough subject to talk about. It was tough for me to talk about, but like I said, we're here to raise awareness. And if I can't be open, if we can't be open and honest and talk about it, no one else will either. So just trying to raise that awareness. So go ahead and go like our Facebook page, The Police Condition. Um, if you're listening to us on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, like our page, follow our pages, give us a good rating. And again, if you need someone to talk to, you can email us at thepolicecondition@gmail.com or message us on Facebook. We'll always be there to talk. We just, like I said, want to raise the awareness and want to get everybody engaged and realize that, hey, mental health happens to everybody, good or bad, and we need to be open and honest about it. So, again, this is The Police Condition. I'm Ryan,
I'm Laura.
and we're 1042.